Over a period of 3 months of full-time travel, flying 23,000 miles over 12 flights, myself and my partner Kelly saved £28,007.70, which is roughly $38,000. And this isn't some exaggerated YouTube thing where you try and find the most expensive version of that flight on a date and say that that's how much it usually costs. I'm talking about the actual costs on the day we booked them, how much they actually were supposed to cost, and how much we actually paid for them. And I won't keep you in suspense about how we do it. Most of you will already know or will have guessed from the thumbnail, but we did this with points, specifically British Airways Avios points. But what flights did we book? Why and how did we book them? Did we get good value for those points, or could we have used them even more wisely? And perhaps more importantly, how can you do something similar to save yourself thousands of pounds on luxury travel? That's what we're digging into today, so let's get started. So for the start of our trip, we knew we were going to go to the Middle East. We'd looked at a cruise that we wanted to do that was going to go from Doha in Qatar, all around the Middle East and down the east coast of Africa before finally ending in Mauritius. So we knew we had to be in Doha by a certain date, but we did have a bit of flexibility about when we got there exactly. We were both going to be finishing work at the end of January, and our cruise wasn't going to start until the 9th of Feb, so we did have a bit of wiggle room about when we arrived, and that flexibility can be really helpful when you're trying to find reward flights. We had quite a big pile of British Airways Avios, and we've been really keen for a while to try out British Airways First Class, and I knew from previous searching around that you can often find pretty good availability in the Middle East, specifically on the routes to Kuwait and Bahrain. Now that Kuwait route is no longer available, or I don't think it's going to be going forward, but the Bahrain one is still available and still does show pretty good availability. And we were able to find availability for the two of us to fly first class on British Airways to Bahrain. Now I've got everything saved on a spreadsheet here, so if you see me looking over to the side, that's just what I'm referring to. But the total cash price of these was going to be £4,786. That's the cost per person going one way, but you only need 68,000 Avios per person for this, plus £742.89 in taxes and charges. We also had a British Airways Premium Plus Amex card companion voucher, which was due to expire fairly soon, so we used that towards this booking, and that was able to save us half the points. So in the end, it only cost us 68,000 Avios in total, plus the voucher, so 34,000 Avios each, plus £472.89 each. Total cash saving £8,626.22 using 68,000 Avios, which means that we got a value of 12.68p per Avios. And that 12p per Avios is a very nice redemption value to be getting, especially when you consider that you can buy Avios for about 1p per point. So we're getting 12 times that value on a redemption like this. Now, is it true value we're getting? Would we have actually ever paid for the cash ticket? No, absolutely not. So it's not necessarily a saving to us, but it's a way of us getting a higher value experience that we would never be able to pay for and making it really accessible for us. I did think that flying this first class flight might be a bit of a once in a lifetime for us, but incidentally, I have actually now found an even cheaper route to fly BA in first class, and I will be doing that in about a month's time. Once we were in Bahrain, we spent a few days there exploring before making our way over to Doha ready for the cruise. Now the cash flights for this segment weren't too bad. It was looking at £182 per person. That's for flying in economy. Didn't think for the length of flight it would be overly worth going for the first class option for this one. And economy was only 7,000 Avios each, so 14,000 points in total, plus £49.70 each in taxes and charges. That meant we spent 14,000 Avios to save ourselves £264.60, so that meant that we got 1.89 pence per Avios. Not a crazy value for the points, but still better than that 1p per point that you can typically buy them for, and double the rate that you get when you're using Avios Boost. And it is always really useful to do these calculations if you were ever looking to do a cash fare. Maybe you don't have enough Avios in your account. You might think that the cash option is the only way to go. But if there's redemption availability there, and if paying for points and then redeeming them is going to save you money over the cash fare, then in most cases you're going to be better off just doing that. Once we were in Doha, we then took our 17-night cruise, which was a bit of an eventful one. I did make a video about that experience on the channel. And then once we landed in Mauritius, we were then looking at a route that would get us over to Asia. There were no good Oneworld airline routes, and most of our points were in Avios, so we were looking to fly with Oneworld Airlines predominantly. But I did see that Emirates had a direct route from Mauritius over to Dubai, and I knew that if we could get over to the Middle East, we'd probably be able to find some Avios availability to get us over to Asia. I did a bit of searching around, Again, I don't use any special websites for this. I was just on the BA Reward Flight Finder website, searching various dates, and eventually managed to find some availability that could take us from Doha to South Korea. And that was going to be flying in Qatar QSuite. Even better than that, I did find that we could go from Dubai to Doha to South Korea. It would only add a few taxes and charges, and it meant that we also got to fly QSuite short haul first class for that initial leg from Dubai to Doha. Because that initial short haul leg was in first class, it meant we also got to try out the Al Safwa lounge in Doha. So as soon as I saw there was availability to do this, I got that booked in. We then paid the cash price to fly Emirates to get to Dubai for the start of the trip. We'd booked that in economy initially, but then nearer the date, we did find a decent upgrade offer to pay in cash to upgrade to business class. And then our flights from Dubai over to South Korea, the cash price of that was going to be £2,536. That's per person, so it would have been £5,072 in total. We spent 65,000 Avios each, or 130,000 Avios in total. The taxes per person were only £165.70. We were only out of pocket £331.40 to fly first class from Dubai to Doha, and then business class in Qatar QSuites from Doha to South Korea. So that meant that for this leg, we'd spent 130,000 Avios to save ourselves £4,740.60. And that meant that we got a value of 3.65 pence per Avios. So more than 3 times the cost if you were to buy the points. After 4 nights in Seoul, we then made our way over to Osaka. Now for this one, there was a route to do that with Japan Airlines. But because I've been eyeing up a Japan Airlines flight for later in the trip, I decided to keep a bit of variety and fly with Korean Airlines. Because this is a relatively short route, the business class fare with Korean were actually pretty low. I think we paid about £280 per person. So we just booked that one with cash. We spent just over a week travelling around Japan, going to Osaka, Kyoto and Tokyo, taking the bullet trains to explore around, and then after that we made our way over to Taiwan. At this point in the trip there were a few places that we wanted to get to, but we weren't really set on a particular order of doing them, so we let ourselves be led by where the points availability was. We knew we wanted to go to Taiwan, we knew we wanted to go to Hong Kong, and we knew we wanted to end up in Bangkok because one of the first things that I looked at on this trip is finding out what our route home was going to be, and that was going to be from Bangkok because that's where I've been able to find good availability, but we'll come on to that one in a little bit. So knowing where we wanted to go, I looked at the next 2 legs of Taiwan and Hong Kong to just kind of figure out which would make the most sense in the order. There was availability going from Tokyo to Hong Kong with Cathay Pacific, and we would then also find availability with Cathay Pacific to get to Taiwan and then to get over to Bangkok. But because I wanted to mix things up a bit, I didn't want to just fly with Cathay Pacific, I wanted to try out Japan Airlines. I searched around a bit more and managed to find a route that we could go with Japan Airlines over to Taipei, be able to fly in business class, and most importantly for me, the thing I was most excited for was getting to try the first class Japan Airlines lounge in Narita. I'm so glad that we did because it's honestly one of the best lounge experiences we've had. Incredible food, unlimited sushi, really great drinks, really nice Japanese whiskey, one of the nicest whiskies I've ever had. And the cash price for this one, considering it was quite a short leg and on a business class seat that wasn't exactly the most modern and up-to-date one, they were charging £1,422 per person when I looked this one up. So for the 2 of us to pay cash for that flight, it would have been £2,844. Nowhere near worth it. But it was only 31,200 Avios per person, and the taxes and charges were only £67.40 per person. So for 62,400 Avios, we were able to save a total of £2,709.20, getting a value per point of 4.32 pence. Sorry, 4.34 pence. Gotta be accurate about these things. From there, we were flying from Taipei over to Hong Kong. We went with Cathay Pacific for this one, and to be honest for this, the cash price was actually pretty cheap. It was only £103.60 per person. But by this point, this trip cost overall had started to add up. We've been booking nice hotels, we had a couple of cruises lined up, and we still had quite a big pile of points left. So we ended up just spending Avios for this one. It was 9,500 points per person. Taxes and charges were £22.70. So in total, we spent 19,000 Avios to save ourselves £151.80. So we were only getting about 0.8 pence per Avios for that redemption. Not the best value if you were to buy them, and it would never be worth buying points and then redeeming them for this flight. But because I do acquire a lot of points very cheaply through activity I'm going to be doing anyway, or through referral points, and because we really need to keep that cash cost low on such a long trip, we decided it would be worth just using the points for this one. After a few days exploring Hong Kong and Macau, we then had to make our way over to Bangkok to get that flight back to the UK. For this one, there was absolutely loads of availability on Cathay Pacific, multiple flights per day, plenty of business class availability, so it was really easy to find this one. The cost of a cash ticket was going to be about £582, and the Avios cost was 30,000 points, plus £50.80 in taxes and charges. So overall, we spent 60,000 points on this one, saved a total of £1,063.78, meaning we got a value for our points of 1.77p. Again, not a crazy value this one, but it is close to double the value that it would be to actually buy points, so not bad at all. Next up, we had a flight back to the UK. This wasn't the end of our trip, but halfway through we did have a quick stop back home, so we knew we wanted to come home for a few days, but we had a bit of flexibility about when exactly we were going to do that. So early on, when I knew we were going out to Asia, I started looking at good routes to come back. I'd flown with Finnair the previous year and had really enjoyed their new business class seat, so I was really keen to try it over a long flight, and Kelly was really keen to try it out as well. So one thing I prioritised was trying to find a route with Finnair that would get us back. And there seemed to be some decent availability flying from Bangkok. It did take a bit of searching around. I don't think we quite found the ideal date. I think ideally we would have gone maybe a day before when we were first planning it out. But going that following day, there was availability. And it seemed like a pretty great deal. Now, interestingly enough, the cash cost is actually pretty low when you're considering it's a really long flight in business class, and a very good business class at that. Finnair were only charging £1,482.90 per person, and that's to go from Bangkok over to Helsinki, where we'd have a bit of a connection in the Platinum Wing before heading on to London. We paid 80,500 Avios per person, and the taxes and charges were only £39.60. So we're getting all the way from Bangkok to London in business class, and we're only out of pocket £39.60. Overall, it meant we'd spent 161,000 Avios to save ourselves £2,886.60. Again, the value we were getting for our points was actually very similar to that previous Cathay Pacific flight, about 1.8 pence per Avios. When you look at it at the overall value, it doesn't stand out as being a crazy one, but to me, being able to fly that distance in business class and only paying 40 quid out of pocket is an incredible deal to get. We had a few days back in the UK to rest, recover, do a bit of life admin, get some laundry done, and then it was time to make our way over to the Caribbean for a cruise. The cruise is going to be starting from San Juan, Puerto Rico, and it's quite limited options out of the UK for getting over there. Generally speaking, you're going to fly out to somewhere on the east coast of the US, get a connecting flight down to Puerto Rico from there. The only direct flight from Europe really is going from Madrid. That presents a good opportunity for us to fly with Iberia in business class, who had some fantastic rates. Now, unfortunately, they have recently increased the cost of their Avios flights, but they are still very good value. They're just not quite as good value as they were at the time that we booked this one. At the time of booking, going from Madrid to Puerto Rico, and we did make sure we started the flight from Madrid. If we booked it from London and connected through Madrid, it would have cost us a lot more in taxes and charges and more Avios. Just the way it's priced out of London, it's always really expensive. So we just booked a cheap cash flight over to Madrid to start the Avios booking from there. And the one-way cash flight with Iberia would have been £3,650 each. That's £7,300 total. Meanwhile, the one-way business class ticket is 34,000 points. But because we had another Amex companion voucher that was due to expire, and we didn't really have any other flights that we could use it on coming up, we decided to use a companion voucher for this flight, which halved the amount of Avios that we needed to use. So it only actually cost us 17,000 Avios each, plus only £103.60 in taxes and charges. So we spent 34,000 points plus a companion voucher. It saved us £7,092.80. So this one gave us our highest value for our points of 20.86p per Avios. An incredible value. Now, obviously for this one, the business class cash fare was so expensive, we never would have paid that. So you could argue about whether that's a true saving. It's probably not really fair to think of it as a cash saving that we've got, but it is a way of getting ourselves a much higher value experience for a lot less money. Again, only paying just over £100 out of pocket. Fly transatlantic business class. They now serve Johnny Walker Blue Label in Iberia business class. Most of our airlines like Emirates and BA only have that in their first class. I definitely made sure I got my £100 worth of that. We had a few days in San Juan before we set off on an 11-night Virgin Voyages cruise. Absolutely brilliant trip. I have been working on a video for that one. It's not come out yet, but it will be out very soon. And then we knew that after this cruise, we wanted to spend some time in Costa Rica to finish off our holiday. And we did this with a couple of flights going with American Airlines via Miami in economy. Because we have our Oneworld status, we were able to book main cabin extra of American Airlines for no additional charge. So we did have a good bit of comfort in economy. Didn't feel like it was worthwhile booking the first class for this one or business class, as it would have been quite a lot more points. And we just kind of thought for the distance we were doing, we wouldn't get the value for it. And when I looked, there wasn't availability anyway. This one, there were quite specific dates we wanted to leave. We knew we'd want to leave the day the cruise finished because we were going to spend quite a bit of time in Puerto Rico before the cruise, and we have spent time there in the past as well. So with this one, we didn't have that flexibility to search around for better flights. We just had to go what was available on that day, which was the economy ticket with American Airlines. These two flights, they weren't the best value for points. Similar to the flight that we did earlier in Cathay Pacific Economy, it was one of those where the cash fare isn't bad, but we still had this pile of points. Thought we may as well use it and keep our cash costs down. So in total for the two of us for these two flights, we spent 64,000 Avios, saved a total of £471.80, giving us roughly a value of about 3/4 of a pence per Avios. So again, not great value if you're acquiring points quite expensively. You know, if you're only getting these points through credit card spend and you were redeeming them like this, you would have been better off with a 1% cashback card. But because we get our points very cheaply and get quite a lot of them, it felt like a worthwhile redemption just to save the cash. We then had a great 10 days traveling around Costa Rica, where it was finally time to unfortunately make our way home. And this is where our luck ran out with the redemptions. We looked for a few different routes that could get us back. We had thought initially about going via Mexico City, trying a first class route with BA because that sometimes has decent availability, but there was nothing showing. Couldn't find any good reward availability of American Airlines either, or with BA going via Miami. We did try a few different dates as well. For this one, we had a bit of flexibility, but not as much as some of the other legs. You know, we knew how much time we wanted to spend in Costa Rica, and we knew there was a certain date that we needed to be back for to get back to work. So for this one, we did end up just spending cash to fly American Airlines business class back home to London. We knew that after doing all this travel and all this flying in premium cabins, we didn't want to then just fly home in economy or premium economy. So we were willing to pay that cash price for business class. Thankfully, though, we managed to find a very good deal, and I did make a video about that as well. But in total, the flights that we took using points, there were 12 segments in total. The distance covered was 22,989.9 miles from those flights. If we had paid cash for these tickets, we would have spent £15,000 per person, or £30,006.38 in total. Instead, we used up 612,400 Avios, and we paid £999.49 in taxes and charges each, or £1,998.98, so just under £2,000 in taxes and charges in total. That meant that the 612,400 Avios we spent saved us £28,007.40, giving us an average value of our points of 4.57p per Avios. There will be people out here who routinely get better than that, but I'm pretty happy with that rate. As I mentioned before, if we had started this trip on 0 points, but had found this redemption availability, it would have been well worth buying the points to then redeem to save on the cash value for most of these. Obviously, 612,400 Avios is no small total, so I think it's important to give context of how we earned these. So firstly, it is myself and my partner Kelly who earn these points. It's not just me, so that does help us to rack these up a lot easier. We've both got credit cards to earn these points. We've referred each other to get bonuses. We've both referred friends to get referral bonuses as well. I have this YouTube channel where I do talk about these cards, talk about how to earn these points. So sometimes people do reach out to me for referrals. That means that they get a higher sign-up bonus, and it also means, though, that I get referral bonuses. Every bit of spending that we do goes on these cards that earn us points. But not just that. Whenever we're doing any kind of spending online, whether that's for clothes, grocery shopping, anything travel related, you know, when we're booking a hotel, we're always going via the British Airways e-store or through the rewards app. It doesn't cost any extra when you do this, but it can earn thousands and thousands of additional points. And although we do book flights with Avios every single year, we tend to earn more than we've been spending, and that's why we're able to accrue just so many points as we did here. It can also be incredibly hard to find Avios redemptions, particularly out of the UK, and if you don't have flexibility with the dates that you're able to travel, it can be tricky, especially if you're not booking ahead of time. We were booking these about 8 months before we left, but ideally you want to be booking them about a year before you go. British Airways opens up their availability 355 days before departure, and for the more popular routes you need to be right on it on that day to secure these flights. But I think something that really helped us to get really great value for these points is that we were outside of the UK. The taxes and charges on flights out of the UK are really high, and it really cuts into the value you get from these. Especially if you're flying with British Airways, you do usually need to use quite a lot of points to get anywhere. Once you've used your points though to get out of the UK, if you're then flying on to other places using different Oneworld airlines, you can get some fantastic value out there. And on a multi-destination trip like this, especially if you do have flexibility about where you go and when, that's where you can get some of the best value for your points. Hope you found all that useful to get a bit of context about what you can do with Avios points, the value that you can achieve. But if you do want to learn in a lot more detail about the many different ways that you can earn Avios, the best ways to then find that reward availability and book it to get the best value, I've made a complete guide on my channel, over an hour going into detail about how to do all this. So if you want to learn more, go ahead and watch this video next. Thanks for watching.